All right, folks, let's break it down what took place yesterday with Donald Trump's speech to Congress with our panel. Joining me to my right, Monique Presley, of course, Principal Presley Law Firm. To my left, Greg Carr, of course, he is with Howard University, head of the Afro-American Studies Department. Sue Zodak, Republican consultant. Spencer Overton, President, Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Last night in his speech, as I said to the members of Congress, Trump touted law enforcement and how wonderful they are.
We must build bridges of cooperation and trust, not drive the wedge of disunity and really it's what it is, division. It's pure, unadulterated division. We have to unify. Police and sheriffs are members of our community. They're friends and neighbors, they're mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, and they leave behind loved ones every day who worry about whether or not they'll come home safe and sound. We must support the incredible men and women of law enforcement.
And that's what he had to say. And then, of course, he began his speech talking about civil rights in Black History Month. Yet, earlier in the day, his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, you know, the guy during his hearing, they said was a champion of civil rights, you know, a proud brother. Well, he said they're going to ease up on filing lawsuits against police departments accused of what? Civil rights violations.
But we need, so far as we can, in my view, help police departments get better, not diminish their effectiveness. And I'm afraid we've done some of that. So we're going to try to pull back on this. And I don't think it's wrong or mean or insensitive to civil rights or human rights. I think it's out of a concern to make the lives of people, in particular the poor communities, minority communities, live a safer, happier life.
Monique, he said, we want to help the police departments. Last I checked, a consent decree is there to improve the practices of police departments. By having a consent decree, you are enforcing the laws, and you're saying you're going to do this, as opposed to, we'll apply the soft touch. We're just going to help y'all get a little better.
Yes, and the job actually of the Department of Justice is not to coddle and assist police departments. If the states are going to do what it is their job to do, whether it's community policing or supporting with infrastructure, then they should be doing that as well as the municipalities. The job of the Department of Justice is to enforce the law and to protect the civil rights of its citizens. So when he's saying that by backing away from things like consent decrees or enforcing civil rights laws through lawsuits, what he's saying is that courts have found that a police department is so in violation of the law that we actually have to come in and take over. And he is now going against that and saying that's not necessary. And that is dangerous. It affects the lives of the very community members that he claims to be in support of by doing it.
This is perfect. This is clear, Greg, that Jeff Sessions doesn't give a damn about civil rights. As Monique said, wants to coddle law enforcement. And if you are African American or Latino and you have been the victim of police abuse, you've been the victim of wrongful police shootings, you cannot, for the next 4 years, look forward to a Department of Justice who is going to hold law enforcement accountable for their actions.
That's right. Not only can't you look forward to that, you can look forward to them being, in the words of Sean Spicer, unshackled. And you heard that language again. I mean, that was last night in Trump's dystopia to Trumptopia speech. It's the same playbook. It was very interesting yesterday. You know, I watched that conversation he was having with the Attorney General. He got into a dust-up with the State Attorney General of California, the one who replaced Kamala Harris when she came here, around this issue of picking up immigrants. And in fact, he basically gave him a veiled threat saying, you know, I hope we can cooperate, but if we can't, you know, I hope you will respect the law. Jeff Sessions, Beauregard, is all for states' rights until he gets the big stick. Not only can we not look forward to being protected and have this oversight, we can look forward to the police acting with impunity. Look at what happened to Muhammad Ali Jr. Last night I'm watching Marco Rubio clap with that feral look on his face when in his home state, Muhammad Ali Jr. and his mama get stopped coming back from Jamaica, born in the United States. What Jeff Sessions is doing is sending a message. He's sending a message that Donald Trump re-inscribed last night in his dystopia to Trumptopia speech. Basically, this is America. We are nationalists. There are people who will never be American, and we're going to unleash the police to police and surveil as many people as we can and send this threat, brother.
So the Department of Justice did reports on Baltimore, on Philadelphia, on New Orleans, on Cleveland, on Chicago. They were invited into the city of New Orleans and Philadelphia by those mayors in their report about the Chicago police. New York Times headline, Shelley, go to my iPad, please. New York Times, Chicago police routinely trampled on civil rights. They talked to people who said black folks are routinely called the N-word by Chicago police. Chicago police verified calling black people the N-word. They talked about the illegal stops. They talked about the police abuse. What Jeff Sessions is saying, y'all good as far as we're concerned.
I don't think that's what he's saying at all. I'm not connecting.
Say right there, Shelley, replay what Jeff Sessions said. And I want Sue to then comment.
But we need, so far as we can, in my view, help police departments get better, not diminish their effectiveness. And I'm afraid we've done some of that. So we're going to try to pull back on this. And I don't think it's wrong or mean or insensitive to civil rights or human rights. I think it's out of a concern to make the lives of people, in particular the poor communities, minority communities, live a safer, happier life.
He just said we're going to pull back. If you don't file the suit and get a consent decree, you have no enforcement mechanism.
But he's not saying he's going to pull back on the education of, you know, these police departments, as you've mentioned, that we all agree they may have issues or training or retraining. He's not saying any of that. You're connecting two different things. You're connecting, you know, having to empower our police force to keep us safe, which I think everybody agrees with, and finding ways to do that so that there are less conflicts.
What? But Sue,
Spencer, I'm sorry. I can't even respond to that. Spencer.
Disunity, division is not caused by police reform. It's not caused by acknowledging the problem and addressing it. It's caused by Eric Gardner dying and ignoring it. It's caused by John Crawford getting shot down and ignoring the problem here. And what I heard from him is that we're pulling back. This isn't a problem. This collateral damage is just collateral damage, and it's a part of keeping America safe. And that's not keeping communities safe. That's not keeping communities safe.
Go ahead.
Well, and one of the reasons why that's so critical, I'm not sure if you meant to say that he's talking about not pulling back on educating police, but that's not a federal job. Again, his job as Department of Justice is to enforce the law. And for a municipality, there's no stronger threat. As someone who worked defending municipalities, let me tell you, there's no stronger threat to a police department or to a state than for the feds to come in and look in all the weeds of what you're doing and then require you to do something and subject you to the auspices of the court for enforcement. We lose our ability.
This really feels like a talking point from police unions. Like, hey, we supported you here, and we're with you.
Police unions. This is what he believes. I mean, Sue, he's talking about pulling back on these consent decrees, but in that same session with those AGs, he talked about stepping up when it came to picking up immigrants and marijuana. He said, I'm not sure that these laws should have been passed. Wait a minute, it's the law. As Monique said, you're supposed to enforce the law.
State issues. Marijuana, all of those are state issues.
Hold up. Actually, but not state issues because Sessions has said they're going to enforce the federal laws. Sue, this is what the New York Times said. Over 161 pages, the investigation, 13 months laid out in chilling detail, unchecked aggressions. An officer pointing a gun at teenagers on bicycles suspected of trespassing. Officers using a taser on an unarmed, naked 65-year-old woman with mental illness. Officers purposely dropping off young gang members in rival territory. The department's missteps go well beyond the officers on patrol, the report said. After officers used excessive force, their actions were practically condoned by supervisors who rarely questioned their behavior. One commander interviewed by the Justice Department said that he could not recall ever suggesting that officers' use of force be investigated further. Jeff Sessions is saying we're going to pull back from reports like this.
No, he is saying that those are state. What is it that you want, Roland? Do you want Jeff Sessions to come in and take over the police department in every single
what do
city?
you think a consent decree? Monique, explain to her again what a consent decree is.
Right. Well, so if the state or the municipality is not doing what it's supposed to do, then either on its own authority or through a lawsuit or the activism of a citizen, a Justice Department can come in, as it did in all these examples Roland is naming, and oversee the enforcement of the law in order to protect the citizens. And that's through an order of the court. And that is the only way, especially in states where they have caps on like what an individual can get when they sue because their rights have been infringed, their civil rights have been infringed. If the government does not handle it, then no one will.
All right, we'll continue to talk about President Trump's joint session speech last night. Sue, I want to go back to you, and this is why this is fundamental for black folks and Latinos and others. And that is, we have seen rampant police abuse. We saw if the Department of Justice does not tell law enforcement, your job is to protect the citizens, not yourself. But when the Attorney General goes before a law enforcement group and pretty much says, gonna treat you like kid gloves, what he is saying is, yo, do what you do. We have seen the massive reports. Ferguson, Baltimore, Chicago, Cleveland. This is the second time in a decade the Department of Justice has to have a federal monitor in that police department. Yes, that's the DOJ's job. And if you are a social justice warrior, you can forget this Department of Justice caring about enforcing civil rights laws.
Again, I agree with everything you're saying up until the point you're saying that he doesn't care about enforcing civil rights laws. I agree that he's saying he wants to build up the morale of police officers, that he wants to make these departments function better, that he wants more of this everyone to do the right thing for society. I'm not translating that into I'm specifically going to harm a race class.
Okay, hold on. So how do you, so if you don't sue them, how do you do that? What authority does the Attorney General of the United States have to ensure law enforcement do what you just said? What is it?
No, I agree with you. That is the process. Again, where I'm disagreeing with you is that he's specifically, disintegrating protections for certain people versus others.
No. I'm asking you again. If he says we're going to pull back on these lawsuits, but he says we want you to do your job better, what mechanism does he have to actually do that other than consent decrees?
I don't know the answer to that question.
He doesn't have one.
Well, there is another mechanism. He could be rallying for Congress to infuse the type of funding that would be necessary in order for every police officer to be wearing body cams, in order for there to be sensitivity training. And he's not going to be doing any of that either.
But funding
he's not advocating those things.
No, it's not. Funding those things is not a state issue. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina has a body cam bill right now. In the last session, Congress approve more money for body cameras. That is not state. President Bill Clinton, when he signed
be a mandate.
When President Bill Clinton signed the crime bill in 1994, it was for 100,000 money to hire additional 100,000 cops. That's also federal. So where are you coming from? It's a state issue when the federal government actually sends money right now, billions of dollars, to local municipalities for police.
And to everyone.
No, answer the question.
I'm just saying I don't think throwing federal money at it is the solution.
So how do you pay for body cameras? How do you pay for them?
You want to change the Cleveland Department of Police, you elect the people in that city that you think are going to support what you're doing.
And when they elected the people there and they didn't change the police department, the federal government came in with a consent decree, and the reason you're having the changes right now is because the Department of Justice sued them, but the new AG just said we're going to pull back from those lawsuits.
Right. And he said, I don't think, and this is key, he's the nation's top law enforcement officer. He's talking to the room for this.
You just identified the key problem here, which is that the local leaders aren't doing what they're supposed to do.
When Jeff Sessions says yesterday morning to the attorneys general of the entire United States, all the state attorney generals, he says, I don't think that it's offensive. I don't think, wait a minute, what you think is irrelevant. It's the law. What he's saying is, I'm going to test the boundaries of my discretion when it comes to enforcing the law.
Right. And we also have federal civil rights statutes that protect people from local officials and local abuse.
Yes.
Right?
And
I
what
agree
we're
with
seeing
that.
now,
you were talking about funding.
at the lowest,
we're talking about exactly what Spencer just said.
At the lowest common denominator, what we're seeing is an attorney general who, if this was affecting people he cared about, would be doing something. So that's why issues that aren't even about civil rights, like opioid addiction, are now getting both federal attention and federal money. But issues like brown and black men and women dying in the streets every day and being abused at the hands of law enforcement are getting a withdrawal of federal support.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not gonna let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally. What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.